My name is Robert, I'm 75 years old, and for a long time I thought pain was just my destiny. Every morning felt like waking up trapped in someone else's body. My knees screamed the moment I tried to get out of bed. My fingers were so stiff, I sometimes struggled just to button my shirt. I used to joke about it with my wife, saying, "Well, at least I still have a heartbeat." But deep down, it wasn't funny. The truth? I was scared. Scared of becoming a burden. Scared that one day my grandchildren would only remember me as the man who sat in the corner, too tired and too sore to play. I hid it well, though. When my son asked me to join him for a short walk around the block, I forced a smile and said I was just a little tired. What I didn't say was that each step felt like fire shooting through my knees. And maybe you know this feeling too. That sinking dread when you realize even the smallest tasks, getting up from a chair, opening a jar, climbing a few stairs, become mountains you can't climb anymore. Some nights, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, "Is this what the rest of my life will be, just pain and waiting?" I know I'm not the only one. So let me ask you, do you also wake up stiff and aching, wondering how long you can keep pushing through the pain? Because if you do, then what happened to me might give you a spark of hope. The pain didn't just stay in my knees. It crept into my hips, into my back, even into my hands. It was like my whole body had turned against me. At first, I thought I could push through it. I told myself, "Robert, you're tough. You've worked all your life. A little stiffness won't stop you." But the truth is, it did. It stopped me in ways I never expected. I used to take morning walks with my wife, just a slow stroll around the neighborhood, hand in hand, talking about the weather, the grandkids, little things. Those walks meant everything to me. But one morning, halfway down the street, I felt a sharp stab in my knee that nearly made me buckle. I grabbed her arm and pretended I just needed to catch my breath. But inside, I knew the walks were over. Then came the forgotten moments. I'd sit down to pay the bills and lose my train of thought because the pain was so distracting. I burned dinner once because I left the pot on the stove while I lay on the couch clutching my back. Even the small things became humiliations. Bending down to tie my shoes? Impossible some mornings. Carrying groceries into the house? Forget it. My daughter had to start doing it for me, and though she smiled kindly, I saw the worry in her eyes. The worst part wasn't just the physical pain, it was what it stole from my life. My grandson used to run to me with his baseball glove shouting, "Grandpa, come play." I'd ruffle his hair and say, "Maybe later, buddy." But there was no later. I sat there watching from the porch while he played with his dad instead. One afternoon, as I lowered myself into my favorite chair, I felt the bones grind in my hips. I gritted my teeth and tried to hide it, but my wife noticed. She put her hand on mine and whispered, "Robert, you're disappearing." And she was right. It was like I was slowly vanishing from the life I used to know. The pain made me cancel dinners with friends. I skipped church more often than I wanted to admit. Even simple conversations felt heavy because all I could think about was how much my joints ached. I remember staring out the window one rainy morning, watching the drops slide down the glass. My reflection looked back at me, tired and pale. And I thought, this isn't living. This is shrinking. Maybe you felt that too. That moment when pain isn't just something you carry. It becomes something that defines you. For me, it wasn't just about sore knees or aching hips. It was about the pieces of my life I was losing one by one. There comes a moment when the pain is no longer just background noise. It takes the spotlight. It demands all your attention, all your strength, until you've got nothing left to give. For me, that moment came one winter morning. The house was quiet, the kind of silence you only notice when you've been awake all night, tossing and turning, waiting for sleep that never comes. My knees throbbed like they were filled with burning coals. Every position hurt. Lying down, sitting up. It didn't matter. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, I reached for my socks. That simple act, something I had done thousands of times in my life, defeated me. I bent forward, winced, and then froze. My fingers hovered inches from the fabric, but the pain screamed louder than my willpower. I sat there, staring at those socks on the floor, realizing I couldn't even dress myself anymore. And I cried. Not the loud kind of crying, just a quiet, hollow sob that comes from deep inside when you're too ashamed to let anyone hear you. I didn't want my wife to see. I didn't want my children to know. I didn't want my grandson to ever picture his grandpa broken over a pair of socks. That morning I thought, is this the beginning of the end? Is this how it all fades away? The world outside kept moving, but mine had shrunk to the four walls of that bedroom. I skipped breakfast, skipped the phone calls, skipped everything. I just sat there, sinking deeper into myself. The worst part wasn't even the pain. It was the shame. The shame of needing help for everything. The shame of saying no when my family asked me to join them for a picnic. The shame of watching life pass by while I stayed behind. I avoided mirrors because I didn't want to see the man I'd become. My shoulders hunched, my face lined with fatigue, my eyes dull. I didn't recognize him. And in those moments, a cruel little voice whispered inside my head, maybe it's easier to just stop fighting. Maybe you've had that voice too. That whisper that tells you it's pointless, that you're too far gone, that there's no way back. That was my bottom, my breaking point. The day when even putting on socks felt impossible. And if you're there now, if you've hit that wall where pain steals your hope, I want you to know something. You're not alone. I've been there. I know what it feels like to think your best days are behind you. But what I didn't know that morning was that something unexpected was about to change everything. It wasn't a doctor who gave me the answer. It wasn't a prescription or some complicated treatment. No. The turning point came on an ordinary afternoon, from the most unexpected place. I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in my old flannel shirt, watching the world move while I felt stuck. My neighbor Clara, she's a few years younger than me but full of life, walked over carrying a small basket of groceries. She set it down with a smile and said, "Robert, you look pale. You've been cooped up again, haven't you?" I tried to joke it off, but she could see right through me. After a pause, she leaned in and whispered like she was sharing a secret. "You know, there's something I've been using that helped my joints more than any pill ever did." I raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about, Clara? Some kind of miracle drug?" She shook her head. "No, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just turmeric, plain old turmeric." I laughed at first. "You mean that yellow spice people put in curry?" "Exactly," she said. "But it's more than just a spice. It's one of the most powerful natural anti-inflammatories. My grandmother swore by it, and now I take it every day. Robert, I'm telling you, it works." I wanted to dismiss it. I'd tried so many things before. Supplements, creams, even expensive injections that left my wallet thinner, but my joints just as swollen. But something about the way Clara said it, calm, certain, not trying to sell me anything, stuck in my mind. That night I sat at the kitchen table with a small jar of turmeric in front of me. My wife placed it there after hearing Clara's suggestion. "What's the harm in trying?" she asked gently. I stared at that jar for a long time. Could something so cheap, so simple, really do what all the doctors and prescriptions hadn't? Finally, I spooned a bit into warm milk, stirred, and took a sip. The taste was earthy, strange, almost bitter. I wrinkled my nose but swallowed it down, and in that moment something shifted inside me. Not in my joints, not yet, but in my spirit. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of curiosity, a tiny seed of hope. It wasn't a miracle cure, it wasn't instant relief, but it was a beginning. I remember thinking to myself, if a neighbor's wisdom and a kitchen spice can offer even a little light in this darkness, maybe, just maybe, there's still a way back. The first week, I didn't expect much. Honestly, I thought turmeric would end up like every other so-called solution I'd tried, just another disappointment. But something felt different this time. On the fourth morning, I noticed I could swing my legs out of bed without wincing quite as hard. The sharp stabbing pain in my knees, It was still there, but it had dulled, softened somehow, like the volume had been turned down a notch. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding my mug of tea, when my wife tilted her head and said, "You're moving easier today, did you notice?" I hadn't, until she pointed it out, and that realization lit a small flame inside me. By the second week, I began to notice other changes. My fingers, which had been so stiff I struggled with buttons, started to loosen. One morning, as I buttoned my shirt without fumbling, I laughed out loud. It was such a tiny thing, but to me it felt monumental. Even my grandson noticed. One afternoon, he came bounding through the door, glove in hand, and asked, "Grandpa, want to throw the ball around?" Normally, I'd shake my head and say, "Maybe later." But that day, something inside me said, "Why not?" We only tossed the ball for a few minutes. Nothing big. But seeing his smile, hearing his laughter as the ball slapped against the leather glove, it felt like the world had cracked open again. It was just 1 spoonful of turmeric and warm milk each day. That's all. But something was shifting inside me. I wasn't pain-free. I wasn't cured. But I was lighter, stronger, more present. And my family could see it too. At dinner one night, my daughter leaned across the table and whispered, "Dad, you seem brighter." "What changed?" I smiled and tapped my glass. A little golden spice. They laughed, but I wasn't joking. Something was happening. The nights were still rough sometimes, but I was sleeping better. The mornings weren't as brutal. I even started walking down the driveway to get the mail again, a task I'd avoided for months. And each step I took, no matter how small, reminded me that maybe life wasn't closing in after all. Maybe it was opening back up. It was like a voice inside me whispered, "Keep going. You're not done yet." I'll be honest with you. I'm not the type to believe in magic. If something works, I want to know why. So after a couple of weeks of feeling those subtle changes, I sat down with my laptop and started digging. And what I found about turmeric absolutely floored me. It turns out turmeric isn't just some old kitchen spice. Inside it is a compound called curcumin, and scientists all over the world have been studying it for years. Harvard researchers have published studies showing that curcumin has powerful anti-inflammatory properties. In fact, some trials found it could work as effectively as certain over-the-counter pain relievers, but without the same side effects. Stanford scientists dug deeper and explained why. Inflammation at its core is your body's defense system gone haywire. It's like a fire alarm that keeps ringing long after the fire is out. Curcumin, they discovered, helps calm that alarm. It blocks certain proteins that trigger swelling and pain in the joints. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, even published reports showing how curcumin acts like a shield, protecting not just the joints, but also the brain and the heart from the wear and tear of aging. But here's what amazed me most. Curcumin doesn't just mask the pain, it addresses the root cause of inflammation. That's why people around the world, from India to Japan to the United States, have been turning to turmeric for centuries. And yet, most doctors barely mention it. Maybe because it's not a prescription. Maybe because it costs pennies compared to what pharmaceuticals bring in. Reading those studies, I felt like I had stumbled onto a hidden treasure. Not a cure, not a miracle, but a natural tool backed by real science. Of course, the experts warn it's not a quick fix. You don't take 1 spoonful and wake up running marathons. It works gradually, building up in the body, calming the fires of inflammation day by day. But that's exactly what I was experiencing. The science matched my story. And that gave me something priceless. Belief. Because when you know there's research from Harvard, Stanford, and the NIH standing behind your little jar of golden powder, it no longer feels like wishful thinking. It feels real. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen, and thought, so this is it. This is the reason I'm starting to feel alive again. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Turmeric wasn't just going to be an experiment. It was going to be part of my life. Once I understood what turmeric could really do, I made a decision. It wasn't just going to be something I tried for a few weeks. It was going to become part of my life. At first, I kept it simple. Every morning, while the house was still quiet, I'd warm up a glass of milk, Stir in a spoonful of turmeric and sip it slowly by the kitchen window. The drink was thick, earthy, and golden. Some days I added a pinch of black pepper, something I learned boosts absorption. It wasn't fancy, but it became my ritual. That little yellow cup in my hands felt like more than a drink. It felt like an act of care, a reminder that I was choosing to fight for my health, one sip at a time. Soon I started slipping turmeric into other meals, a sprinkle over scrambled eggs, a dash in vegetable soup, even mixed into rice. My wife joked, "You're turning everything golden these days." And she was right. But something else happened too. Turmeric gave me the spark to make other changes. I began walking again. Not far, just around the block at first. The fresh air felt sharp in my lungs, but with each step, my body loosened. My knees didn't scream the way they used to. I also paid more attention to what I was eating. I cut back on the processed snacks and sugary drinks I had leaned on for comfort. Instead, I reached for fresh fruits, leafy greens, and a handful of nuts. Nothing extreme, just small swaps that added up. And for the first time in years, I started sleeping better. Maybe it was the reduced inflammation, maybe it was the calmer mind that came with it, but the nights weren't endless battles anymore. Looking back, I realized something important. It wasn't just turmeric that was changing my life. It was the momentum it gave me. Because once you feel even a little bit better, you want more of that feeling. And so you take another walk. You eat another healthy meal. You turn off the TV earlier and go to bed on time. It's like stacking bricks. Each small choice builds on the next, until one day, you look around and realize you're building a new life. I thought about what Clara had said when she first handed me that little secret. "It's simple, Robert, just start." And she was right. You don't have to change everything overnight. You just need one small step, one small habit that gives you hope. For me, it was turmeric. For someone else, it might be something different. But the lesson is the same. The sum of small choices makes all the difference. And when you feel those small victories stacking up, it no longer feels like you're shrinking. It feels like you're expanding again, back into your life. Months passed, and somewhere along the way I realized I wasn't thinking about pain every waking minute anymore. It was still there sometimes. Aging doesn't vanish, but it no longer ruled my life. One crisp autumn morning, I laced up my shoes without hesitation. The simple act of bending down, pulling the laces tight, and standing up straight again felt like a quiet victory. A year earlier, I couldn't even imagine doing it without groaning in defeat. I began walking further, not just down the block, but through the park, where the trees blazed with gold and red. I passed children on swings, couples walking their dogs, joggers racing by. And instead of sitting on the sidelines, I was part of it again. One Saturday, my grandson came running up with his baseball glove. "Grandpa, let's go," he shouted, his eyes shining. This time I didn't hesitate. We played catch for nearly half an hour. My throws weren't perfect, but they were mine. And the look on his face, the pride, the joy, that alone made every sip of turmeric worth it. At dinner, my daughter looked across the table and said, "Dad, you're back. You're yourself again." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because she was right. For the first time in years, I felt like me again. The results weren't just physical. I felt sharper, clearer, more present. The brain fog that pain used to bring started to lift. I found myself remembering small details again. Birthdays, stories from the past, even little jokes my grandson told me. Even my wife noticed. One evening, as we strolled through the neighborhood together, she slipped her hand into mine and whispered, "I thought I lost you for a while." I squeezed her hand back and said, "I thought I lost me too." Turmeric hadn't given me back my 20s. It hadn't erased every ache. But it had given me something far more precious. Freedom. The freedom to move. The freedom to laugh. The freedom to live without fear of being trapped by pain. And perhaps the greatest gift of all, I no longer dreaded the years ahead. Instead of shrinking away from the future, I welcomed it. I could finally say, with honesty, today I'm not afraid of getting older. Because now I know aging doesn't have to mean surrendering. It can mean adapting, fighting back, and finding simple, natural ways to keep moving forward. If there's one thing I've learned through this journey, it's that pain doesn't have to be the end of your story. For a long time, I thought my best days were behind me. I thought I was destined to fade quietly into the background, defined only by what I could no longer do. But I was wrong. All it took was a conversation on a porch, a neighbor's whisper about a simple golden spice, and the courage to try something new. And you know what? That small choice changed everything. I'm not telling you turmeric is a miracle. It's not magic, and it won't erase the years. But for me, it became a lifeline, a reminder that even in our 70s, even in our 80s, we still have power. Power to change, to adapt, to fight back against the things that try to steal our joy. Maybe right now you're sitting where I once sat, staring at a pair of socks on the floor, wondering how you're going to bend down. Or maybe you're lying awake at night, aching, asking yourself if this is the beginning of the end. If that's you, I want you to hear me clearly. Don't give up. It's not too late. It's never too late. Your story isn't finished. Sometimes the answer doesn't come from a doctor's office. Sometimes it comes from the wisdom passed down through generations, from the simple things we've overlooked, like a jar of turmeric sitting in the back of the kitchen cabinet. And if something so small could help me, maybe it could help you too. So let me ask you, do you struggle with pain and stiffness every morning? Have you ever tried a natural remedy that surprised you? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below, because your words might be the spark of hope someone else is waiting for. And if my journey spoke to you, if you felt even a little less alone while listening, then I invite you. Share this with a friend, a parent, a neighbor who might be suffering in silence. Because no one should feel like they're disappearing. Remember this, you still matter. Your life isn't over. And there are simple, natural ways to keep moving forward. Don't resign yourself to pain. Don't accept that decline is your only path. Take one step, one choice, one small habit, and see where it leads. For me, that first step was a spoonful of turmeric. For you, it might be something else. But whatever it is, don't wait. Because the truth is, it's not too late to take back your life.